the hot topic of diagnosis. So, right. This comes up, speaking of TikTok live streams, this is like number one question every single live stream. How do I get a diagnosis? I need a diagnosis. I've got BPD, but no one will diagnose me.
Why do you need a diagnosis?
That's what I always say. That's my why. What's the thing? And I think that what people want to do is go to their doctor and say, "Doctor, I've got BPD. Sort it out." And they don't realize that that's not gonna happen or work. And so, yeah, so they come to me and say, "How do I get a diagnosis? I need one so much." Like, why? That's actually just one element of it, though. The other element of it I think I made a video about it a week or two ago, was sort of, I've had enough with adding extra diagnosis to me at this point, and it starts to feel like I'm now caught in some sort of cycle where I'm just looking for things and go, well, this could be that thing, and can I add some more letters to these problems that I have?
Yeah, you can have too many.
Yeah. And so I've reached a point where I don't want any more, and I'm purposefully not looking.
Yeah. I'll tell you my view on this. I think diagnoses are helpful when they direct you to the right treatment. So if you have, and what I would say to someone who thinks they have BPD is, don't necessarily rush to that conclusion. Because if someone's presenting for the first time to me as a mental health professional, I'm not quick to think about personality disorders. You want to treat, if there's depression, if there's anxiety, if there's substance abuse, you want to start by treating those things first, because someone who's very depressed can look like they have an avoidant personality disorder.
Yeah.
Right. Or they can be depression can be so self-absorbing. People get very, very self-critical. They get very caught up in their own minds. They're constantly ruminating on themselves. And then you could say, well, that's vulnerable narcissism. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I'm kind of like, let's treat the depression or the anxiety disorder or the substance abuse or the psychosis or whatever it is. Treat that first. And then you see what's left and you start to build a bigger, broader picture. And I think where personality disorder diagnoses are helpful is when they start to direct you towards longer term psychotherapies. That's the treatment for personality disorders that is unique to them. But if you have a personality disorder and you also have depression or anxiety or a substance abuse problem or psychosis, you want to treat those things too.
Absolutely. And I think people get in this state of, like, they want to be able to, like I said, they want to go to their doctor and say, I think I have this. And what I try and tell people is, you don't have to have a defined, you feel bad. Do something about that. Go and say you feel bad and describe the way in which you feel bad. And you know, I think that's what people seem in some way reluctant to do or uneasy with, or I don't know.
You can end up going to the doctor and they say, take some antidepressants. I mean, I'm sure it's the same the world over, but I know in the NHS, mental health services are so stretched that the GPs will basically try anything they can reasonably try to start with, because the thresholds to get into mental health services are high, the waiting lists are long. So, you know, probably if you present for the first time, you're probably going to get sent away with, here, take some antidepressants.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah. And so, so I can see why people might want to kind of have some self-understanding and want to be able to advocate for themselves. Actually, I think this is more than an episode of depression, and I don't think it's enough to just treat my depression. I want more than that. I think I need more than that. But then the assessment should be careful as well. I mean, there's a lot of lazy diagnoses of particularly BPD. I've seen people get a diagnosis of BPD 15 minutes into a consultation.
Oh, right.
BPD in that length of time.
No,
but they
not at
self-harm.
all. Yeah, it's like, and so yeah, we need more. There's so much more to it.
Exactly.
That is another thing I encounter alarmingly often, is that people are unaware of the length of time involved in it all. The craziest one I got was someone who said, "I've been fine my entire life, but since I've been with my new boyfriend, I've caught BPD."
No.
And no, you don't. I don't know where to start. Right, you don't catch it. It's not the flu, and you don't just wake up with it one day. This is not, go away. But it's there is some, like, you want to do the education, but it's like there's so much education to do with that one sentence you just threw my way. It's unbelievable, and I don't know where to start with it. But it certainly feels like there's I don't want to over exaggerate, there's an epidemic of self-diagnosis now, but there's a lot of it.
More and more people are self-diagnosing, and I think it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, good that people are recognizing mental illness in themselves, and they're realizing, hang on, there are treatments for this. I don't need to sit in silence about it. I can realize something's going on. But then you also get people diagnosing other people, usually boyfriends or girlfriends, or husbands or wives, or diagnosing, being so quick to make a diagnosis. And like, no, you shouldn't be that quick. Or also seeing the diagnosis as the end of the story, because I'm like, no, especially not in personality disorder. Because you want to understand, to me, it's the start. It's an opening chapter. It's like, well, now you have to understand the history, the childhood, the ways that things have developed over time, the patterns that you're in now. The way they impact relationships, because they don't exist out there in someone else. They exist in relationships.
Yeah, I should say publicly to any guys who are indefinitely in the future going to email me and describe your ex-girlfriend and ask if she left you because she's got BPD. What I actually do is I look at your profile photo and I say to myself, she didn't leave you because you've got BPD, mate. And then I close the message. So don't send me those messages, I think, is you can if you want, but I will make fun of you and show my girlfriend and go, look at this dude, his girlfriend left him. So just being honest, I know that's a bit harsh.
Very harsh.
But FP2468 in the chat says, I went to the doctors the other day to request help with BPD. I explained my situation, but they geared me towards proving I have PMDD and ADHD first before getting any kind of help.
If you have PMDD, I don't know if you did, but if you did, that's very treatable.
Sorry, what is PMDD?
So it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Okay.
So it's some people will get quite extreme depression or mood swings or rage episodes, or just emotional chaos. It's really, really distressing, usually in the second half of their menstrual cycle.
Right.
And you can manage it in lots of ways. You can manage it with antidepressants, but you don't necessarily have to take them your whole cycle. Some people will take them just after they ovulate. So they take them for half the cycle. And you can also treat it by stopping your cycle. So you can go on the pill or get a coil or some form of hormonal contraception that basically stops you ovulating.
Right. I see. Fair enough. I see why I've not encountered this on my own.
Not your own personal experience. It really works. But also, I have seen people with PMDD start attracting personality disorder diagnoses because the behaviors can be so extreme and out of the blue, and they have a massive effect on their relationships, when actually it's hormonal. And when you correct the hormonal issues, I said it's not like there's a hormonal issue. These are people with normal cycles, but if it's just their reaction to the hormones in the cycle. And when you stop the cycle, the the mood swings stop.
Can that be like tested for then? If it's a hormonal thing, can that be chemically tested for?
No, because
No.
it's people with them. They have normal hormones.
Right.
It's a reaction to normal female cycle.
I see.
So the way you can figure out if that's what it is, you can like keep a diary and see if the change in moods lines up with their cycle.
Right.
Or sometimes people will find that they start taking contraception and it goes away. Or some people find that they stop taking contraception and, oh my God, they're crazy again. So people often figure it out by themselves.
Right. Cool.
So, yeah,
so
there you go.
that's fixable.
If you have PMDD, you would want that diagnosed and treated. That is a really useful diagnosis to have. And I would say, get therapy, stop the cycles.
Yeah. I mean, so that's an example though, of where you can, it's a reaction to a hormone that you can physically do something that just stops it.
Yeah.
And so I totally would agree. Yeah. A diagnosis in that case that's good. You want that. That's because that's a sort of, here, take this, do this, whatever, and it will stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas with the more like symptoms of BPD, those things that come out and all of the, that's a much lengthier sort of, you're going to need therapy.
Yeah. And you can have BPD and PMDD.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And in that case, you're going to need more than contraception. You're going to need much more, potentially therapy, other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
ADHD is another one. I think that's a useful diagnosis to have, because ADHD medications work quite spectacularly for some people.
That's why I'm fairly eager to get one myself, to be honest.
One, I think it is a useful one to have.
Yeah. I do feel like if I could be on something that just helps me focus a bit more and sort of stay on target, so to speak, then that would make such a difference to my day to day.
Yeah. It does. And it's another one, it can co-occur with personality disorders too.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've come across where I think they're quite linked in some ways, because someone's childhood experience with untreated ADHD means they're having such negative feedback from their teachers, from their parents. People are getting frustrated with them. They really start to see themselves as not good enough, as inadequate. They have a real sense of failure. It compounds in kind of emotional dysregulation that they have. It's not a good combination.
Yeah. Yeah, all those things you've just described are why I think I have it. It's all. I've yet to see anyone talk about their ADHD or look into it and find something that I go, well, that's not me. It's another one where I'm ticking every box and have been since childhood, that sort of thing. So I'm happy to believe it lives in my brain or whatever it does, and it's weird though, I feel like I feel like I can feel it separately from the BPD.
Yeah. How?
Right. So the one I always think of is the emotional dysregulation. And the emotional dysregulation it's like the BPD emotional dysregulation is much slower and for me, not as deep. Whereas the ADHD emotional dysregulation is instantaneous and can take me from laughing to crying in the space of seconds and back again. It's much sharper, much quicker, and there's much more of a physical reaction to it. The BPD stuff feels much slower. Like that I will be in a low mood for a while and then a high mood for a while and go in these much slower ups and downs. And it feels, I don't know, less aggressive as a mood dysregulation thing. It's just much slower, less of a roller coaster. Whereas the ADHD, I might just be talking utter shit, but that's kind of what it feels like. It's difficult to describe.
What you find out if you do get a diagnosis, if you do have it, and obviously I don't know because I haven't assessed you, and the medication works for you, and it works. It doesn't work for everyone, but it works for most people. That's when you'll see what's ADHD and what's something else.
Yeah, I'll be interested in that. I really will. But yeah, it feels, I don't know. I mean, it's all thoughts and feelings. Nothing is really separate from anything, and it all mixes together. But there's some of it that just feels, I don't know, much more. I keep coming back to the word aggressive, but yeah, it's much faster, harsher, all of that sort of thing, and less moody.
Interesting.
What are we saying in the chat? All right, the information, your child needs to focus more. Line, your child needs to focus more. That was my thing. I did a good job of hiding it for a while, and then as I got older, it started getting harder to hide, and I started trying less hard until I got to sort of 14, 15, and just drove my father up the fucking wall through being not being able to do anything and stick at it and concentrate or focus for long. And so yeah,
things become less and less structured. I think primary school, every minute is structured.
That was that was what went wrong for me at university. Was that it was the lack of structure to that lifestyle. And the lack of regularity. It wasn't even sort of the being able to get up and get out of the house in the morning. It was the fact that I didn't have to do that every morning. I did that on Wednesdays and Fridays. And on Friday, it wasn't till 2:00. And
what were you studying?
First, it was a BSc in computing, which would now be completely obsolete and irrelevant in every way. But it was computers as they were in 1997. The thing that also did me in that first year was I actually got glandular fever as well. So so I kind of just dropped out of that first year, and then went back to do a BA in business and marketing, and then the lack of structure. And
was that less structured, the BA? Yeah,
far less structured. But then
my own theory is that people with ADHD should probably do science degrees because they tend to have more contact hours.
Yeah, you've got the more contact hours.
They'll get there on time. Just
the thing I always preferred about the sciences was that they are more rigid in terms of what's right and wrong. Especially the computing, physics, math. The answer is right or it's not. And whereas things in business, your arts degrees, they're opinion based. That's the write an essay and have opinions on this thing and that sort of thing. And that's a bit more difficult for me to cope with.
If you're a bit ADHD, if you're on that ADHD, and I think I'm on the ADHD spectrum, I'm completely inattentive. But you can go down the rabbit holes.
Yes, there is that.
And particularly if you've got an arts degree and there's no right or wrong answers, there's 1,000 rabbit holes you can go down.
Absolutely.
And some of them can be very productive rabbit holes and some of them not so much.
I always manage to find the unproductive ones. I really do. That's my thing. And then after that, after I failed that degree, I went back again because third time lucky. Still just told I have depression at this point, by the way. I was living with depression. And I went back to do a QTS, which is Qualified Teacher Status, BA in Primary Education with a music specialization.
It's quite different in business and marketing.
It is. It's a long way from it all. But at that point, I didn't know what on earth I would do otherwise with my life. And teaching came up. My parents are teachers. My dad knew somebody at the teaching college that he could call and say, hey, you should take a look at my son now. And he did, and they did. And suddenly I was going back to uni in September. And the alternative was stay at home with my mum and dad. So the degree could have been something hideous. It wouldn't have mattered. It was not going to be, it was not going to be worse than staying at home with my parents. So yeah, I lasted into the second year with that one. And not for a second do I regret not becoming a primary school teacher.
I don't know how people do it.
Neither do I. Neither do I.
I have one 6-year-old in my house.
Do you know what?
25 of them.
Working with the kids, being with them, teaching them, I loved that. I get on with children so well, and it was primary education, so they were 8-year-olds, and they're about on my level. So it was great. But that's not being a teacher. That's teaching is lesson plans and short and medium and long-term planning and reports and parents' evenings. And what do you mean you've only done 60 hours this week? Stay behind and put up displays and that kind of thing. And I can't do that. That's, the actual business of being a teacher is a nightmare. And I have some friends that do it now, and all they do is rant on Facebook about how unhappy they are. And you look at it and you go,
quite a few people left teaching.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame them. I really don't. I don't think the teachers are moaning over nothing. I think they're going on strike soon, or I assume when term starts again.
They were on strike, and the strikes have now been called off.
Right. Okay. But good luck to them, because they get treated like garbage, and it's, not something I would do. But yeah, with all these undiagnosed things, that was never going to happen. Also, not swearing in front of the children 100% of the time was also beyond me.
That's the impulsivity.
Yeah. It just occasionally comes out. I can't help it. And yeah, they do have a tendency to hear you and gasp and run off into the playground and scream, "Mr. Smith just said fuck," really loud. And then you just sit there cringing and all of that stuff. It's, yeah, don't miss that. I don't miss that. But anyway, this is much more fun than teaching. But then 8-year-olds don't want diagnosing with something all the time. I don't know. It's such a panic thing for some people, bless them. And then, of course, there's the different reactions to the diagnosis as well. Because a lot of people don't seem to take it well.
Depends on the diagnosis. Which one diagnosis are you thinking about?
I've seen all kinds. I've got BPD and now I don't know what I'll do. I've got pick a thing.
The problem with personality disorders is that there's so much crap online that basically says they're not treatable. You've got this for life. You're stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really negative message. And I also think what people don't really understand is that personality disorder does not mean that your personality is flawed. It's about a disruption in your sense of self and the way you relate to people. It is not about you being morally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for NPD and for BPD. They're not, they're not moral deficits.
No, not by
and
any
I think
means.
that's not always understood. And then I think you have such a stigmatizing message about it.
Mm.
Like you have a disorder that means you're never going to have a long-term relationship and that your life's going to be a car wreck and there's no treatment. I mean, that's what people hear. Mm. It's not true.
And that's another thing I'm asked a lot. Will I ever have a normal relationship? And it's like, well, yeah, absolutely you can.
Normal. Like, will you have a good relationship?
That's it. That's what people mean, isn't it? Will I have a good relationship? Hey, I'm all up for people trying alternative relationship structures and things like that. And I think it's something that would benefit a lot of people maybe. But yeah, they mean a good relationship. And I feel so bad for people because I know that pain so well. of what they're going through, that frustration of wanting to be right for somebody and knowing that you've got so much going on wrong and just not being able to do anything about it. It's such a frustrating thing.
Yeah. But that's where I think diagnoses are not so helpful. But when I do couples therapy and someone's like, I need you to give my partner, it's not me to give me diagnose my partner. And I'm like, even if I did, would it make any difference? Because actually, whatever it is, whatever we call it, what matters is how you understand it between the two of you and how you understand the relationship between the two of you. Because there's always two. There's always two in the relationship. I'm not saying the two are equally to blame. I'm not into kind of apportioning blame in that way, but what is the relationship between you? What are the patterns that you're in? How do you make some changes to those patterns so that you both have more fulfilling relationship? What do you both want? How does your pattern trigger their pattern and vice versa?
I think a lot of people struggle with getting that partner to the point of therapy. I keep saying this phrase, something people say to me a lot. But it is that, how do I get them to therapy? How do I get them to even engage in that? And it's, I luckily didn't have that. I was just so obviously ill that there was no way I was going to, let it go and say, oh, I'll just deal with it or I'll get over it or whatever, because I clearly was never going to. And so I sought out that help. But I think a lot of people are worried to and struggle to do that.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. YouTube doesn't help.
No, it is. I don't know. I watched, we shouldn't name names, but who cares? She's big. So I watched Dr. Ramani's video on therapy for narcissists. And I'm like, if I was watching this, I wouldn't know in therapy with you. You are so harsh. I'm gonna explore your childhood. You're gonna have to take a deep dive into your trauma. You're gonna have to be accountable and responsible. And I'm just like, you sound terrifying.
She's terrifying.
There's no curiosity, there's no interest, there's no empathy. I'm not saying you should sit there and tell someone who's narcissistic, yes, the ways you treat your partner badly, they're completely understandable because of your trauma, poor you. No, but you have to be able to empathize if you're going to, in any way, confront someone's more unhealthy behaviors.
God, I can't imagine having therapy with her. It feels like the kind of therapy you go to just to find out what a piece of shit you actually are, and she'll let you know. It doesn't feel like it would be a positive experience at all. I can't imagine someone with MPD watching her videos and thinking, I'd like to hear more from this woman who clearly would like me to be on fire.
I've worked with people with MPD who've watched their videos and actually ended up quite distressed and feeling quite hopeless. And I feel okay to say that because multiple people with MPD who've watched their videos and feel that way, and people I've worked with whose partners have watched the videos and feel that way. And I'm just like, don't watch them. Don't watch them. If they're not helping you, don't watch them. And,
I think
other people you could watch that will give you a much more rounded, realistic understanding.
I think, she's pushed so much by the YouTube algorithm. It's kind of depressing to me. Like when you search for BPD, MPD, any of the good terms that you'd want to search for, before people like you and me come up, you're scrolling through a whole load of
small. We're too small.
Oh God, yeah. The amount of Dr. Ramani and Med Circle and Dr. Daniel Fox and that. Dr. Daniel Fox isn't bad. He's not bad. I shouldn't group him in with it.
No, he's good for BPD. He's really good on BPD.
Yeah. But there's a lot of him. There's an awful lot of him.
There's a lot of him. But why are they not pushing Craig Malkin, Mark Eatonshire, people like that who are putting out some really good content?
I don't know.
And
I guess it's discovery. I mean, YouTube aren't deciding that Ramani should be the de facto voice on Cluster B, but it's just kind of ended up there, and it's no good. And do you know what? If not her, then there's a million like her.
oh,
You
for
know,
sure.
there's a lot of angry people on YouTube who've been in a relationship with a narcissist and are now an expert on it and everything they do and blah blah blah. And TikTok's just as bad.
Oh, TikTok's even worse.
I think I've managed to block most of the Cluster B from my own TikTok because I don't want to see it. I don't need somebody telling me what it's like to have BPD. That's not why I'm looking at TikTok. But it's you're right. It's TikTok. Feels worse to me for the moping on the BPD side of things. I've always felt there's a lot of I feel this way, so this is it now. It's so defeated. It's so broken down, and there are so many videos about watch me cry today. And it's like, no, that's not helping anybody. I know you feel lonely and sad because you're crying on video, but it's not helpful. And there's a lot of it. Christina's asking, how does a narcissist accept they are psychologically I don't think she means it. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say I wouldn't suggest someone like psychologically a 2-year-old.
No, my dog is, but and of course 2-year-olds, but that's basically it. Yeah. So the diagnosis thing, it's a weird one, and I didn't get mine until last month, the month before. It had never been written down for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How come you ended up getting it?
The government, the universal credit people need a letter with it written on. Huh. That was it. Otherwise, and because as I've said before, I got a list of symptoms written down with no particular name or whatever.
I think there's a hesitancy to label because of because it's so stigmatized. I can see why.
Well, there was that. I mean, from the point of view of the therapist assessing me and that sort of thing, I think before, how long did they have? I think we had sort of somewhere 6 or 7 sessions before they pushed me to group, which is about that time that letter would have been written. And I think even over, that was those 7 hours is such a short amount of time that they hadn't had time for everything to come out. So much more came out in the weeks and months that followed, and so I think sort of confirming anything or being sure about anything will have taken some time.
Yeah.
Understandably so, because these things are, as they're a mess and they're all over the place.
It's a rush to diagnose. And I also think, like, once someone's in therapy and you've got a fairly long-term therapy, the specific diagnosis doesn't make so much of a difference to you.
No,
you kind of want to have a broad overview of this is kind of what narcissism looks like and how you can work with it. This is what avoidance patterns look like. But the actual treatment is much more about who are you? What's your history? What's being triggered for you here?
That's it.
Affecting you or not? What do you need? What's missing for you? It's not about this specific diagnosis. And also, particularly for NPD, I think someone in the chat, Christina, is saying, there's no psychological treatment for NPD specifically at the moment. There are therapies. Schema therapy is the one I use. Transference focused therapy is also one that's used for NPD. General kind of psychotherapy is used. And I think that's all very reasonable to do that. But there's nothing, it's not like borderline where you're like, we've got trials of DBT and we've got trials of schema therapy and we've got trials of transference focused therapy that would say those would be good treatments to start with. But we don't have that for NPD.
Mm. Yeah, my MPD came out in fits and starts in group. It was just a lot of talking and a lot of the BPD stuff that got dealt with a lot more, because I do think it certainly for me it was easier to deal with than anything narcissistic. But yeah, it took a while, and that once you're in, like you said, it didn't matter. I was there to talk about my set of problems, not a set of symptoms or a diagnosis. It was, where you talk about your trauma. That's very unique and personal and that sort of thing. And it doesn't matter. It's that Daniel Fox video I was watching on Quiet BPD, where he talked about, imagine all the personality disorders as cookies, and we like to differentiate and say what type of, there are different types of chocolate chip cookie and oatmeal raisin cookie. And I was sort of thinking, you are right, but you do just eat them all. Which is more, they're cookies, you eat them. We have the same solution, whatever the cookie is. It doesn't really matter. You're going to eat it. I get that there might be some specific cases where maybe a cookie has something you're allergic to and you need to know what that is, but that's a very specific case. And for most people, they're just eating the cookies and don't care. And that's all that matters. And I feel like therapy and diagnosis is a bit like that. It's like, yeah, there are lots of cookies, but just eat them.
These diagnostic categories, it's not like they're discrete. It's not like if you have one personality disorder, you probably have bits of all of them. So, I think it's much more important to have a kind of understanding of the individual person.
Absolutely.
Say, here's the label. Have you ever listened to any of Esther Perel's podcast?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, so she does these one-off sessions, usually with couples, sometimes with individuals. So these one-off sessions, and sometimes I'll listen to them and I'll be like, anyone else would be calling this narcissism or borderline. She never, ever uses diagnostic terms, but what she's so good at, I think, is just getting to the sort of the person is so much more helpful. She did one recently. I might even make a review of it, where she talked to someone about gaslighting. And at no point did she say, yeah, your boyfriend's a narcissist. And in fact, she got away from the kind of language even of gaslighting and much more into what is he doing to you and what is the effect it's having on you and why are you staying in this relationship?
That's the important things that people don't think of. And it's too easy these days to just use all these buzzwords and that sort of thing.
The buzzwords can start to obscure what's actually going on. I mean, I've actually said to people, multiple people in therapy, and also like colleagues who are coming for supervision. And I'm like, listen, you've talked to me about gaslighting, breadcrumbing, future faking, hoovering, discarding. I have no idea what's actually happening. I have no sense of what the quality of your relationship is. I just get psychologies. That's all. It's words. I don't understand anything. Tell me give me an example. What is it like? What does it look like? And that's so revealing.
Absolutely. That you need that personal experience with it all. Otherwise it's just gibberish, really. It's the techno babble.
Yeah. I think so. But
we have PD questions. Says trying to reach NPDs through empathy may create a barrier that just postpones progress that could be made using a more mechanical training approach.
Like DBT for NPD.
I
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think you need both. I think good therapy involves both. Kind of helping people develop new skills. But I do think there is a need to have some form of connection.
I think you need to, because without that empathy, it's very difficult to to even understand why you should change. You know, I needed to know that hurting people is bad because it feels bad to be hurt, and to think, oh, I wouldn't want to be hurt. I don't want to hurt other people, hurting people. But if you don't have that, then that switch can't be, you know, it's that cold. You shouldn't hurt people. Why? And beyond
this is where I kind of think it also depends on the kind of level of psychopathy. Because I think if someone's very psychopathic, that is going to be much more transactional.
Yes.
Like, don't do that, because then you'll go to jail, and you probably don't want to go to jail. So, you know, don't do that, because then there will be consequences. But I think my experience with people who are more narcissistic is actually it takes a long time to get there with the empathy. It takes a long time for them to let you in, but they do need that on some level to be seen.
That feels right to me. Absolutely. I've recently been trying to read a lot more about the dark triad things with the psychopathy and how that all fits together. Yeah. It's a complicated thing, isn't it? I need to read a lot more, and I need a lot more explained to me like I'm 7. To be perfectly honest, I started reading with the aim of making a video about it that day, and after several hours of reading, like, this isn't happening today, and so it's been put right on the back burner. But yeah, the psychopathy mixed with the narcissism and the Machiavellianism is a very interesting combination.
It's a scary combination.
Yeah.
That can be really harmful.
Yeah. I mean, from my point of view, it's the psychological equivalent of watching an episode of How Clean Is Your House? And it makes me kind of put, oh, there's someone worse. It's fine. So I can look at it like that. So I find it interesting. And it's weird because you can sort of, some of these things, you can sort of look at them and realize, oh yeah, if I didn't do this thing, I could see my path to that. I can see the route between where I am and that. And I can see what has held me back or what has stopped me going down that route. But it's alarming to know that these darker paths are there. And, you know, somewhere in the multiverse, a version of me definitely went down there, and it's kind of terrifying stuff. It really is. I continue to read, and maybe I'll understand it enough to feel like I can make a video about it. But I think it's actually an important thing when we're talking about the bad reputation of narcissists in particular, of MPD, to draw that separation, because I think so much that is
with psychopathy.
Yeah, that's what all the stereotypical narcissist hating channels are talking about, that high psychopathy stuff, that really dark stuff. And it's not, you know, that's why I didn't necessarily see a lot of myself in a lot of videos by these people, because it's I'm not doing the dark shit. I just think I'm really great.
I read a biography. It was person's experience. It's actually one of the channels, and it was her experience with her partner, who she's kind of implying is a narcissist. But I'm reading it, and this guy is so instrumentally exploitative from the beginning of their relationship.
Right.
You know, there's total deception from day one, and it's quite clear he's after her money as well. And obviously, she's telling the story in retrospect, and hindsight is 2020. So I'm not saying it would have been obvious to me had I been in the situation she was in. But then I'm looking back and I'm like, this doesn't sound like narcissism to me, because what usually happens for someone who's like purely narcissistic at the start of a relationship is a ton of genuine idealization. And it's that at that point, they're not cheating on you
Mm.
and lying to you and out to get your money. They're absolutely in the thrall of a fantasy of ideal love.
Yeah, that's my familiar feeling with it all. That's when I say, when I talk about being narcissistic about the relationship, not within the relationship.
Yeah. And then it enters the relationship too. It can be both.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was always that, have an idea. It's like the person I'm with, whoever it's been in my life, actually, is seen by me in some way, some sort of prize, achievement, status symbol, something like that. And that in turn, as part of the relationship, makes us some sort of amazing power couple of awesomeness and that sort of thing. It's always been that glowing fantasy.
Yeah. Until you then realize this person's also a human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And has grumpy days.
Yes, indeed.
And leaves their socks in the bathroom floor, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. All that kind of thing, I was still kind of okay with. I think for me, it's different because there's the BPD, which was far more dominant in controlling mood and attitude. That after that, I was kind of doing both. And I think, a lot of favorite person stuff in there, which is like, as another example of how similar these things are, and that how do you really differentiate between what is a BPD favorite person sort of obsession and that narcissistic idealized? It's, it comes out in the same way.
NPD and BPD have a huge amount of comorbidity.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. It surprises. No, it surprises most of my TikTok audience, who will every live stream come and tell me that you can't have both. But no, I'm not. I'm not surprised in the least. These things are so much the same. And indeed, if you really want to make TikTok angry, make a video saying, well, the BPD people do this for the same reason as the NPD people.
No!
Then you'll get some comments. Then you will get some comments. I've been learning that one.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. But see, my argument as well would be, and sometimes my colleagues will say, how do you treat someone who's quite narcissistic? And I'll say, well, I think the best place to start is all the therapies we have for borderline, because they're so related.
Yeah.
They're a bit different. What you'll probably find is they're more shut down. They're actually more emotionally regulated. There's a coldness, there's more avoidance. So you're going to have to kind of think a bit more about that and how you work with someone who's quite shut down and avoidant. But yeah.
It all comes from the same place. Yes. In my opinion, it's all that past trauma, that stuff. We're fighting something else internal all the time. And it comes out in these different ways sometimes, but we're both just fighting this battle against that parent or that set of incidents or whatever, and so I would say, that's what you treat, those things. You don't deal with BPD and NPD, you deal with that time when that horrible thing happened.
You're working with a person and their experiences and their ways of relating, working on the BPD or the NPD.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people think therapy is. I don't know what a lot of people do imagine therapy is, but I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about what it is and what happens in there.
That's what I keep telling people. Go and listen to Esther Perel's podcast, because she's actually doing live one-off therapy sessions with people.
I think that's a good idea.
It's different from therapy because it's a one-off session and it's recorded. And I also know that she does them. It's a 3-hour session condensed usually to about 50 minutes of a podcast.
Hmm.
So I listened to it and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's so slick. She's so fast. And I'm like, no, 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 no. She has got 3 hours with these people. And not only has she got 3 hours with these people, they're screened before they meet her by her team. So they've already had a few hours with her team, and her team have sat and talked with her before they even enter that room. So
Right.
expect her to be very on form.
Yes. And she'll have that audio filter that cuts down all the long pauses between words automatically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Her poses are always of pristine length. Although there is a fantastic episode where she absolutely loses her shit.
Oh, really?
It's great.
That's almost a life achievement unlocked. The day I made my therapist lose her shit.
And especially while being recorded for a podcast.
Yeah. What happened?
They were fighting and fighting and fighting with each other, and she basically ended up caught up in the fight that they were having, and she snapped.
Right.
And she does reflect on it. She talks about it in a podcast, and she's like, "This is not okay. This is not good therapy. I'm not. This is, she's very honest about it. She wrote about it as well, her experience of it. But apparently, it really woke the couple up, and they said it was one of the best things that ever happened to them.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. You're not supposed to upset your therapist that much.
Yeah, wow. We made Esther Perel lose her shit. I mean,
yeah, that's quite an achievement.
Yeah.
Look, do you know what? When I was learning to drive, my driving instructor running the little private driving school, and I remember him giving me his little pledge as a driving instructor that I'll never get angry, I'll never swear, I'll never do that. And I damn well made him swear, and I've held that little achievement ever since I was 17. You promised me you wouldn't swear, and I damn well did it. Just swerved his car into a curb a little bit one time. That got a big swear out of him. That was the thing. And I have always wondered how my ex and I would have done in couples therapy. And I can't ever imagine a scenario where it goes well and we talk. And it would probably, I think, have always gone that arguing route.
Sometimes I say this to couples. Sometimes you can have therapy that helps you maintain your relationship, and sometimes you can have therapy that helps you split up.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, you don't have the best thing. Isn't necessarily staying together.
No, it's not always.
No, I feel like more people should be willing to walk away from relationships. It's
for sure, for sure.
It sounds harsh, but I mean, gosh, how many times do you hear of a relationship problem and you think, well, obviously you should just split up? But given that you're not going to do that, here's some advice or whatever. Or what are you going to do that's the second best solution? Because we all know what you should do. That kind of thing.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all had those friends. Why don't you two just break up and leave the rest of us in peace? That kind of thing. It happens.
It happens. I've been in those relationships.
Me too. And then you're like, well, why didn't you say anything? Well, you couldn't say anything. You just had to break up on your own. Like, oh, fair enough. But after the first 10 years, you should have said something. But anyway, that got specific fast. Anyway. So, shall we leave it there for tonight? Anyway, it's been an absolute delight.
It's been fun. It's been fun.
It has indeed.
And thank you. Say hello to people. Hello to Karen. Because I don't think we said hello.
We didn't. Hello, everybody. Nunya and Christina and Dog Training Mexico and PD Questions. Thank you for watching. And it was very short notice and sporadic, so well done for.
We should do it again.
We should, absolutely. The more I tweet about stuff like this, the more I'm realizing how few people see tweets. And I still want some kind of better. Mind you, people can set up on YouTube to get a notification when I go live, can't they? Yeah. Do that, everybody. Well, look who I'm talking to. You guys probably all did it, didn't you? That's why you're here. Well done. Thank you.
I recognize everyone.
Absolutely. They're a good bunch, bless them. So I'll be back with more another day. I have no idea what or when, probably soon though. And you all take care. Go and check out Dr. Ruth's channel. There'll be a link in the description below, or you can God forbid, type it in the search box yourself. And yeah, anyway, you take care, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.